Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about XenoTilt, the most recent pinball game from developers WiznWar and Flarb. Flarb is also the company that published the game. I'm not familiar with these two companies, or at least I wasn't until now. Their previous pinball game, Demon's Tilt, was met with very positive responses, as was the sequel here. I didn't buy Demon's Tilt first because I simply forgot they were two separate games and I didn't know I was buying the sequel. Not that it matters too much in this genre, since they're just two different pinball tables to enjoy. Here we'll just focus on XenoTilt, which I'll show some gameplay of here while I talk. Funny enough, this is my high score in the game so far. I've had the game for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I've played it almost every day, and despite a steeper learning curve, I'm really having a good time and slowly getting better. The vibe is fairly retro, which suits pinball just fine. The graphics have some pretty slick sprite work though, and feel like fairly modern 2D in my opinion. The sound and general theming remind me of Bride of Pinbot maybe, if we're talking about pinball tables. For reference, I've been familiar with and played pinball seriously for about 15 years I'd say. I've owned a machine in the past, which I failed to fix, but I did try before my friend and I almost set it on fire. I was in a pinball league at one point too, so while I'm not the most seasoned player and it's been a while since I played regularly, this is just to let you guys know my comments here, good or bad, aren't coming out of nowhere. You'll hear a few criticisms of the game to follow, but I feel that they're constructive in nature and don't overshadow the game's successes, which I think are far more numerous. Getting to the gameplay, the table is a 3-tier setup with each tier sporting different challenges called protocols. Finishing these on each tier will light up letters and finally a word. The bottom 2 tiers have bosses in the middle of the table that all behave differently and generally get in the way and try to screw up your shots. The top level sports a humanoid robot who makes the callouts while you're playing. The voice is fitting, if a bit hard to understand. Swarms of smaller enemies are often on screen as well, and you deal with those using turrets that are equipped on each rebound. This is a mostly automated feature, so you're not going to be trying to aim turrets while also playing pinball or anything like that. It's a cool little wrinkle that contributes to the game's identity, not to mention being pretty original. First impressions are very cool. Normal mode is a very solid experience, and EX mode adds bonus rounds you can access which take you to completely different screens. It's very fun. I like the theming a lot as a sci-fi fan as well. Everything looks and sounds really good, other than the in-game HUD, which I think is pretty bland and so benign and basic that it becomes hard to read at a glance. The soundtrack has some exceptional songs and isn't to be missed. Once things start to become familiar and you try to improve your scores is when I started to get a bit frustrated. The game has a modicum of info scattered randomly among the menus, but there isn't nearly enough detail on exactly how to play the game. Users have made guides themselves, and those are pretty handy, but I would have liked to see a thorough tutorial or at least a wall of text somewhere within the software, or at least an online instruction manual you can access. I haven't found anything like that yet, and others online seem to have been searching for the same thing. I always want to leave room for the possibility that decisions like this are intentional. In this case, maybe the devs want to leave things a little vague to recapture the feel of encountering a new pinball machine and not having much to go on. Of course, in real life, other than some text located under the glass, you usually just have to figure out a machine for yourself. I believe these are also small dev teams, so I wouldn't expect anything too expansive, but for a console video game in 2026, there should be somewhere I can look and see how the game works and why things happen when they happen. Thankfully, the information is out there in some form, and I've gotten to the point where I at least know half of what's going on and can play the game strategically, even if I don't know everything I'm doing. I'm finding the protocols a bit repetitive, but this is pinball, right? The challenge and reward is performing all these tasks over and over until you perfect them and manage to complete them all in one game, which I'm sure will lead to some stuff I haven't encountered yet. Despite seeing a lot of the same gameplay beats, it seems like it'll take a long time for most players to see everything. A notable complaint I have is getting used to the flippers and how the ball behaves, which are fine but I think could have been better. I just don't feel like the flippers are quite sensitive enough. The response from the triggers on the Xbox controller is not quite instant, and I still don't have a feel for where I'm hitting the ball on the flippers sometimes. I tried the shoulder buttons as well, but I felt like I was getting carpal tunnel because I had to smash them so hard to get them to register. there's always a bit of uncertainty as far as where I'm putting the ball, which is kind of frustrating. I have committed only 1 or 2 shots to muscle memory because of this, whereas on a real table, assuming it's in good working order, you're going to get a feel for how to hit certain targets or ramps. It's a lot fuzzier playing this game. The ball is also a little too live in my opinion. Balls will roll almost painfully slow down to your flippers and you still won't be able to trap them. Oddly enough, it's sometimes incredibly easy to get the ball to settle down after it fires all over the table at 100 miles an hour. Then other times when it's barely moving, it seems impossible. This isn't as much of an issue if the visual callouts and info weren't so far away from the playfield. Everything is on the outer edges of your TV screen, and there are times where these minor issues combine to create a frustrating situation where all you want to do is settle the ball down so you can look way off to the side and see what shots you're supposed to be making. Active targets to hit do not light up like a traditional table either, which does kind of drive me insane. If you're not going to let me easily read what my current goals are, at least light them up on the table. If they're highlighted in some way and I'm missing it, it's definitely not prominent enough to notice while the action is happening. The tilt mechanic is also mapped backwards on the controller in my opinion. Nudging left should move the ball right and vice versa. When you push the machine left, the ball is going to nudge right. You don't push the machine left and expect the ball to follow in the same direction. That wouldn't make sense logically or intuitively. In this game, you're literally nudging the ball itself with a joystick, so pushing left moves the ball left. That seems like it makes sense, but I can't get it down because again, I would make the argument that it's mapped backwards and incorrectly. For reference, the litmus test I use for all of these things is the game Pinball Hall of Fame Williams Collection, which came out during the Xbox 360 era. In my opinion, it's the best pinball experience ever released on consoles for sheer content, but also how it plays. The overall gameplay feel is exceptional, with tons of classic tables represented, and the tilt works the way it's supposed to. I'm still trying to unlearn this for XenoTilt, which I really wish had an option to reverse these controls, much like how the XY axis can be reversed in many games. Lastly, because this game is very good, and I'm focusing on the negative here, the game seems to start you out on the bottom tier most of the time when you lock a ball and take it off the table. Staying on tier 2 or 3 is really important for the sake of strategy, but also for the simple fact that you can't lose your ball if you're not playing at the bottom of the stack. However, when I lock a ball on tier 2 or 3, I'm usually forced to start back down on tier 1. It's like the game rewards you accordingly, but then sends you back to the bottom through no fault of your own, where you really risk losing everything you're working on. If there is game logic to this, I haven't seen it yet. Could some of this be a skill issue? Sure, but I think I've given solid reasons why these are legitimate criticisms that could be improved in future games. Make no mistake, I play this game almost every day, and I'll usually play at least 5 or 6 games a night. If you enjoy pinball, it's an automatic purchase. It's just that in your first 20 to 30 games, most players will be completely lost. The visual style is really cool but muddled, so it's hard to see where ramps go or how the ball got from one place to another. However, there is a color contrast mode that I turned on after recording this footage, and it does sharpen everything up and make everything a bit easier to see, including your ball when there's a lot of chaos on the screen. As mentioned, the normal and EX modes are good fun, and there's also a hardcore mode where you only get one ball and the flippers are shorter. There is also Crisis, which is a time attack mode I haven't dug into much, but within the confines of a single, albeit 3-tiered table, the developers did a great job giving you enough to do, and the total package for $19.99 is a very fair price. Buy with confidence here. I'm really interested to play Demon's Tilt at some point because, aside from experiencing another great pinball game from these companies, I want to see the natural progression from that game to this one, which I think will flesh out my overall opinions here. I do dig this game a lot though, despite some concrete misgivings about how it plays. I'm here for any futuristic, sci-fi driven pinball table, and there's some very deep gameplay here. Video game pinball sacrifices the tactile feel and physical craftsmanship, but replaces those with a different kind of craftsmanship and the ability to execute more ideas and get more creative than anyone ever could building a physical table. XenoTilt is a fantastic example of that and deserves to be in any Pinhead's digital library. So what do you think? Tell me in the comments, and also let me know what your overall interest in pinball is. I think it's a fun hobby that I'm glad has experienced a resurgence, and I'm glad games like this exist. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you next time.